Hello, everybody. This is Hondo Carpenter, your Las Vegas Raiders beat writer on Sports Illustrated and the host of the Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast. Great to be with you today. I want to apologize in advance. Obviously, with my job, I do a ton of travel. And even when you go to Southern California from Vegas, there's massive changes in weather. And then you go to Cincinnati and everything else. I'm fighting a cold, plus I'm doing a million interviews. So just forgive me. If you see me drinking some chloroseptic or chewing out of halls or having to blow my nose, bear with me. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. John, what are you doing?
I'm looking around for my fisherman's friend. That's my go-to. Been about 15 years with fisherman's friend. I think that's about as good as it gets. I've got
What
like
is that?
44 packs. I thought I had one right around. It's on the other side of the desk. But everybody's got their go-to. Fisherman's friend, though, worth a shot.
Chloroseptic is my go to, but the problem is it numbs your throat. So you talk more and probably make it worse on yourself. But all right, here we go, John. We got a lot to talk about around the NFL and the Raiders. So before we start Raiders, I want to start with Devontae Adams. And, he goes to the Jets and they struggle. Um, I never wish harm on people. I'm not saying that you do, but I think sometimes it's a great reminder the grass isn't always greener, is it?
Especially not when you go to a franchise like the Jets with the record that they've got. So now what? My guess is Adams is trying to get out of town as fast as he can to San Francisco, maybe somewhere else. He probably wants to get out, probably realizes, whoops, I stepped in it. I didn't make much of what Adams said after his first game with the Jets right away, which was probably a mistake. I think what he was doing there was kind of pulling a fire alarm. The Jets are a joke. Would they be as much of a joke if they didn't fire Robert Saleh when they did? Possibly, possibly. But I think Bill Belichick, ready, fire, aim, put that on the t-shirt, wear it to your Jets finales. I don't think it gets much better for Adams or the Jets. Sometimes you try too hard. I don't know what happened. I don't know why Adams did what he did. We know there's a deep dive to digest that's coming. And we also are not sure the story's over. I don't know who's putting out this news that Adams may be going here or be going there, but my guess is it's Devontae Adams' representation that wants him out of New York as fast as he got there.
Huh. Huh. Yeah. I wonder. All right. Let's get to the Raiders. Um, as bad as the season's going, they still should have beaten the world champions if they had an offense. You look at against the Rams, they had first and goal 3 times, couldn't score from the 4. Against the Chiefs, first and goal from the 3 4 times, couldn't score. The special teams is excellent. The defense is excellent. Patrick Graham just continues to coach his tail off. That guy is just phenomenal coach, and he's a better human being, but phenomenal coach. When you look at this Raiders team, it's more proof they're not that far away. They're a quarterback away. There's a lot of pieces here. They do not need a major rebuild. That is a fallacy. And I don't care what happens. I know what I can't control what others do. Anyone that would try to sell this team that this team needs a rebuild should not be trusted, in my opinion. And I look at this team at 2-6, a quarterback away. Now, are there some weaknesses? Sure. But I mean, a quarterback away from being in contention for the playoffs. And not a Super Bowl, but playoffs. I I am baffled at this offense. I'm baffled. I'm baffled that after the scripted plays, they fall apart. I'm baffled that they go against the Rams, one of the worst rushing defenses. They're having success. They go away from it and throw 44 times. Even that next week, AP admitted, I wish we would have run the ball more. And then last week, or not last week, but Monday, when asked about, um, you know, how do you fix it? Why are you failing once you go off script? And I mean, he talks about why can't we do, you know, repeating plays that work. I mean, he's clearly questioning it all. And tomorrow, here in the Natty, they play the Bengals. They're good enough to win. I don't have any confidence until proven differently that this offense can win. So if they lose, which I suspect, and again, good enough to win and should win, he's got a bye week that he has to do something because his career, and I don't think the man should be fired. I believe in AP, but something has to happen to demonstrate. All right, we're doing something to fix it. I'm not saying you should fire anybody, but something significantly is if they lose today and this offense looks terrible. I mean tomorrow, they have better do something quick, or it's going to go bad to worse. John, your thoughts?
There is a lot in that defense that has made progress. You can go position by position and see guys that have developed. Like you said, Patrick Graham has to have a lot of credit there, from the corners to obviously up front. You give them credit for showing up as they should as a professional football team. They showed up. The defense showed up on Sunday and hung in there quite well against Kansas City. The interesting thing is, why is there a disconnect at this level with the offense? They have a great player in the making, no question, in Bowers. I'm not sure if there's one or two remarkably important injuries on the front that has totally changed the offense. I don't think that's the case. I like you, given that it's the NFL, think it's probably a quarterback more than anything. They get some credit for exploring the quarterback options that they've got. They think they have an understanding of what Aiden O'Connell can do at this point, to their credit. Same with Gardner. Now you've got somebody else coming into the building. Might as well find out what he can do. That's what the NFL is set up to do. But when we talk about putting players in a position to succeed, it sounds a little bit coach speaky, but it literally is, okay, how do we evaluate what the defense is giving us, or what pieces can we move around to give us an opportunity to be in the setup that we want? And that's not really been consistent for the Raiders. And what you've seen is an offense that hasn't been able to get out of second gear, let alone into third or a higher gear. And they are now going into a place where the season looks pretty much over in Cincinnati. It really does. At the same time, this is offense is known to score and probably is going to score. So more onus on the Raiders to actually do something on that side of the ball. You talked about the bye. We talked about where it's sat since the summer and looked at it as maybe a potential spot for a quarterback change. At maybe some more changes are needed. Antonio Pierce wants to be the coach of the Raiders. He's got to make decisions. And I think the era of waiting until after the season to make these kind of changes is done. I'm not sure it's going to be an offensive coordinator change as much as it would be a style change or maybe some more input, but it may need to be. He's got to find a way with what he's got here in 2024 to get more out of the offense. I don't think that they're missing really good offense or even a middle of the road offense. I think that high side for this unit is probably somewhere in the teens. If you're looking at an NFL ranking, they're nowhere near that. So there's more that they can get. There's no reason not to try everything and turn over every single stone. This is the NFL. They all matter. You don't mail any of them in if you want to stick around for a long time. I do think it's going to be, this is not where Antonio Pierce certainly thought he would be at the start of November. But he's got to make a move. He's being forced to make a decision that's going to impact the next phase of his career as a head coach. There needs to be some progress that is made. And he may need to have more input, or he may need to make a change in the direction that offense is going, because some of the self-inflicted wounds, that's what seems to bother people. That's what people see. Those self-inflicted wounds, they stand out the most. When you just get beat, it's like, okay, we ran into a Bosa. or when Aaron Donald was around, that's an Aaron Donald thing. But when you beat yourself, when you don't look organized, when you don't look prepared for the job, that's when you look at the leadership, the people calling the plays, designing them, influencing them, choosing the direction. That may be what needs to be changed. And it may be coming very soon in Las Vegas.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And I don't know this, so this is purely opinion. I want to make that very clear. The Raiders need to let him do what he wants to do. The reason I'm saying that is if you're going to judge him, and with new ownership, he deserves to be, if he's not going to be the head coach, then don't let him. But if he's that head coach, and he comes in and says, listen, I'm making a change, or I'm doing this and doing this, there better not be any resistance upstairs. And I'm not saying there is. I don't know, but I'm just making that clear. All right. I want to get to a subject because obviously the Raiders need a quarterback. Not saying Minshew can't turn the season around, or Aiden, we don't know. But before we get to this, you'll remember this. I had general managers, one of the best quarterback drafters ever, when Anthony Richardson was coming out, because we talked about it, say to me, somebody's going to draft him in the first round because he's big and he's strong. Doesn't have enough experience, and gave us all of these reasons. And you'll remember this because we talked about it. And he said, I wouldn't touch him before the third round. And the guy even said, probably the fifth. But somebody's going to take him because there's so many bad drafting, desperate teams. The guy gets injured the first year, injured this year. Now he's tapping out. He's a lost cause in Indianapolis. And when you look at these guys, so I asked a general manager recently, who are you looking at on Saturdays? He goes, Hondo, this time last year, we weren't sure Jaden Daniels was a first rounder or JJ McCarthy. It's way too early. But let's take a quick look ahead at potential guys for next year, John.
Yeah, there are some. And you want to stay away from guys that aren't ready to play. That may be an issue, but it's not necessarily an issue for some of these names that some of you all may already know. We're talking about guys like Cam Ward at Miami, Carson Beck at Georgia, Jalen Milroe at Alabama, big guy, Shedeur Sanders, of course, Quinn Ewers. I'll throw out a name a little bit distant, but sound familiar to Raider fans, Nussmeier, a quarterback at LSU. I think some folks know about his dad. And who knows, maybe Travis Hunter can play quarterback also, since he's doing a lot of different things.
But I'm going to give you another name, John. Jackson Dart at Ole Miss is a guy I'm hearing some scouts start to talk about. And the kid at Indiana, who was injured last week, he's getting a little bit of talk as well. I mean, there's a lot of guys getting talk. I don't think there's one guy that right now, I know there's not one guy that everyone says he's the guy.
I don't think so either. I'm with you.
So this is where it is a crapshoot to say we got to get this pick, because there may not be anybody there, and you may take a quarterback just to say get your fans happy and let a Brock Bowers go. This is where I respect Tom Telesco so much. He could have taken a quarterback last year that they were unsure about and let a Brock Bowers go. I got so much respect for Tom Telesco. Dave Ziegler the year before. I just respect how they do it. I respect the way they operate. This is a crapshoot. You got to let this play out. Your thoughts?
You don't need to reach. You don't want to reach. So in my opinion, let's talk about reaching at the quarterback position. We're talking about a size situation where a guy is either undersized or has questionable health because of age. I think that the Indiana guy may be a little bit older than some. We also need to look at somewhat of the game experience. Does a guy like Ewers have enough experience? The guy that's bounced from Ohio State to Texas versus a Carson Beck, who's got a whole lot of experience being in that Georgia program, not as much playing experience because he was at Georgia. Shedeur Sanders, is that going to come with some baggage? Yes. Do the Raiders need baggage and hype and excitement? I don't think so. There's enough. There's enough there. They need to be worried about winning most. When you talk about the evaluation process that is, like you said, lightly begun for the quarterbacks, meaning that I'm sure the Raiders are aware of who's out there, of aware who's going to be considered, depending on when they draft. But obviously, they're not deep into it yet. It's barely November. They don't need to do that. This is going to be interesting to watch. And it is important, maybe a little more important, that the Raiders are on track with what they are going to do with their offense moving forward with Antonio Pierce. The sooner they're on track with that and they know, hey, this is who we are, this is going to be our identity, probably the better they can come together as an organization and say, okay, these are most likely the quarterbacks that we have that we think that are going to be best for us, but we're going to evaluate all these guys. And when they go in and do those meetings and do the work with those players, the prospects, that's when you see that show up. One of the great things about Hard Knocks off seasons with the Giants was not just how Charlie Brownish the Giants looked at times, but the interviews that they had, bringing players in, Daboll questioning them, and you see them throwing it around. You get a real feel. A lot of times people in that sport will tell you, you get a real feel for who is ready to play at the NFL, who can handle the NFL playbook, the NFL responsibilities, and maybe who cannot. And if it's not, then you're talking about a reach situation. You don't want to reach for a quarterback at the top. Spencer Rattler went, to me, pretty much right where he should have gone, and looks to me like he's going to have a decent NFL career from here, whether a starter or a backup. Some of the other names, Richardson, who knows about Penix, maybe they did not. We are in a different era with the draft. It would not shock me if the Raiders, for some reason, took 2 quarterbacks next year. It would not shock me. That is not the worst idea in the history of man if the opportunity presents itself. But as some pages turn, we're into a new month. You want to know who to keep an eye out there. You maybe heard some of these names before. Sanders, Ward, Milroe, Beck, Ewers, Nussmeier. Those are ones to keep an eye on. And if you're like me and you're really concerned about size and durability, take a look at the big man from Alabama, because he's got a physical edge on some of those other guys. With a caveat, Anthony Richardson had some physical edge also, and he may be on his way out, because amazing as it could be, Joe Flacco seems like he's been playing for 25 years. He leaves Pitt because Tyler Palko comes in and somebody says, Tyler Palko's our guy. He says, adios, muchachos. I'm going to Delaware, and the rest is history. Take your hat off. Joe Flacco loves football, still throws football very well.
I'm going to tell you a couple things, and I don't want to get into all these guys, but just a little bit. In the interest of full disclosure, I love Deion Sanders. Love the guy. I do. He is not a friend. I'm not implying that, but away from football, I have had several interactions with him. I respect him personally. You know, I maybe sometimes the bravado's over the top. I admit that, but I like him and I respect him, and he's just an unbelievable father. There are some concerns with Shador that I'm hearing from scouts, and I'll tell you what those are. None of them are character, like he's a bad kid. But I'll give you one example, and there are several, but I'll give you one. He loses the Nebraska game. And after the game in his press conference, he says, how many times did the Nebraska quarterback get hit? And I had a scout tell me he not only threw his teammates under the bus, but he also threw his dad, because these are the kids his dad recruited, under the bus. And he said, I know in our organization how we rate quarterbacks. Ding! That he took a huge hit. And this is a guy I know who works for an organization that's going to be drafting a quarterback next year. He said that was a huge hit. He gave me some others that I'm not allowed to share publicly, just because they don't want to share all of their scouting, but because that one happened publicly and so many scouts have talked about it. But again, I have no issues with Shador as far as bad character or a bad person, and I love Deion, but that's one. Carson Beck. There's a lot of concern that he's distant from his teammates. He's not a bad teammate. He's just, he's a business guy. He walks out of the locker room and does his thing. And I've heard this from people at Georgia who get frustrated with him. And I've heard it from scouts. I had one scout tell me, he goes, I don't think anyone dislikes him, and I don't think he dislikes anybody. But it's almost like, okay, yeah, they're my coworkers. And there doesn't seem to be that. I could go through all these guys and give you blemishes, but Jackson Dart's a guy that I've not heard one blemish on. Nussmeier's a guy I haven't heard a blemish on. I'm just giving people some names. But the point of the matter is, you don't want to get to the draft next year thinking we got to get a quarterback if one's not there and you miss a Brock Bowers. All right, let's get, if you don't mind, hey, Carolina Panthers, you're still in the NFL. John, what is going on?
Panthers, Broncos, late in the game. A Panther player thinks it's a great idea after the game to start honking at Sean Payton about running trick plays when we're up big. And Sean Payton gets asked about it. And there's a little bit of a scene. You can't really tell what's said on the field. And Payton's asked about it on Monday, and he's got the right answer. He says, you just got to play better. Of all the places that this does belong, and this behavior from a player does not belong, it's the NFL. It's professional football. This isn't the University of Miami versus Northern Florida, access granted Southwest Louisiana Tech combined, for God's sake. This is hilarious. What is going on in Carolina that you've got a player running his mouth to an NFL coach about running trick plays? Where in the world would you think that's okay? That's wrong. I'm sure that's going to get straightened out. Obviously, just like some folks in Chicago have some business to straighten out with some of their players. By the way, they had some timeouts. They had timeouts left. That's a whole different story. This is hilarious. It's the right answer by Sean Payton. It is the NFL. There is no place for anything but the best in the NFL. If you don't want to have trick plays or you don't want to get embarrassed or shown up, you need to play a little better. If you don't want to play for 60 minutes, get yourself off the field and find somebody that does. There's no tolerance for this. Again, small point, this would be a spot where the expanded roster would once again help. You're going to see more guys playing harder at all minutes of the game, including garbage time, and nobody foolish enough to run their mouth and say, why are you running up the score? There is no running up the score in the NFL. This is the most competitive sport in America. This is the most popular form of entertainment in America. This is hilarious that this Panther player would say anything to Sean Payton, and Payton handled it perfectly.
Yeah. By the way, one other quarterback I want to tell you, I'm hearing a lot of intriguing things on is Cam Ward. I'm hearing some stuff on that kid. All right.
It's interesting.
Next.
It's interesting. He's interesting.
Next, the NFC West. I mean, if there's a division that speaks to parity, is there anything more than the NFC West?
How did this happen? Everybody is nearly lockstep, even Steven. We're talking Arizona, Seattle, San Francisco, and the Rams. Who is going to take it? We're going to preview to the featured foursome. You're absolutely right. That Rams and Seahawks game is going to be in there. So who takes it from here? We are seeing the window closing in San Francisco. Is it going to close before they get to where they need to get again? I don't know. Looks very close. Again, we don't want them to come up one player short. If they do, that curse of Trey Lance is going to be stuck in ink. This is fascinating to me. Arizona is a disaster of a franchise. Their owner is going to be replaced. Book it. He's going to be on the way out. But they've got something going there. They've got a healthy Mighty Mouse Kyler Murray right now who's doing some things. Did you know the Cardinals are 4-4? Nobody did. Isn't this something? Arizona, Seattle, San Francisco, and the Rams. I like a lot of different things about these teams. We know how good the Rams were going at the end of last year. We also know they don't have Aaron Donald this year. At some point, that makes a difference, doesn't it? We see massive development in Seattle. We see probably the best running back in the sport, Kenneth Walker, doing his thing. I love Jackson Smith and Jigba, as people know here, and Seattle's got some things going on with the receivers. But all that experience in San Francisco, all that intangible in San Francisco, how much of that gets watered down by injury? Who takes the West from here? Fascinating. Most fascinating division in the sport right now.
I agree. I totally agree with you. Anthony, tap out Richardson. We already talked about him, but man, I got to tell you, I don't want to go there anymore.
I just want to take my hat off to Joe Flacco. I mean, this guy loves playing. He just loves playing, and I hope he loves to be. These are the kind of guys that to me would look like they'd be phenomenal quarterback coaches and or coordinators if they want it, because it's like you don't have anything else you want to do.
I've had people tell me they think Joe Flacco is going to be a head coach.
You know what? He just learned just a little bit from that guy in Baltimore, who we will talk about. We should talk about briefly. Let's talk about Baltimore. They recognize we have a problem here early in the year. I don't like what's going on with our pass defense. They also realize we may have a collective solution that works, and that is the professor that is Dean Pease. Why does this happen in Baltimore? Probably a couple reasons. He worked there and he wants to work there. He wants to be involved. You know, sometimes you think, well, why can't we go get this guy? Or maybe we should, why doesn't our team call this coach to come in and help? Maybe they don't want to go there. That might be part of the reason why. As the Ravens story continues to develop, the addition of Dean Pease, how they did it, when they did it, is going to stand out. He's a guy a lot of us know real well, been coordinator all over the place. Atlanta, New England, Tennessee. Worked a million years ago when one of us was in school at Michigan State. Yeah, take your hat off again to the Ravens for figuring out early, doing something about it. They bring in Dean Pease. How's it going since then?
Yep, I believe in the Ravens. Hey, let's talk about bounce back halfway home awards.
Who did it? Who's bounced back the most? We just talked about the Ravens. We also talked about Philadelphia. Remember at the start of the year, one of us thought Philadelphia did not want to go to Brazil. And they sure acted like it. A lot of people started to write the Eagles off, and now they're running back with the eraser. They're stocked full of talent, as we know, not just the kids from Georgia. I mean, just tons of talent. So who has bounced back best so far from a sluggish start? The Eagles look really good. There's a lot of numbers that you can digest that suggest that they are doing well and that their quarterback is certainly playing better. At the same time, right now, my hat goes just a little bit more to those Ravens, because I think the Dean Pease addition really sets them up for improvement in that back end throughout the rest of the year. And I'll tell you one other thing that's really interesting about the Ravens. When you look, they just got upset, of course, by Cleveland. Not as big of a shock as you think, because Cleveland plays them twice a year. And if you look at Lamar against his division, it's just inherently tougher than when he's playing a team that he sees only once every 4 years. It really is something. I didn't realize there was that stark of a difference. I think this is a speed bump for Baltimore in the loss to Cleveland. It's probably not their last speed bump, but when you look at the two teams that have bounced back most from the starts, I like Philadelphia and Baltimore. It's only November 1st. There's the bounce back to be considered, but I think you got to recognize that those two, they got out of they lost control of the vehicle early, and they corrected the steer, and now they're going back down the road straight.
John, let's talk about our fearsome foursome. First of all, where are we on the year?
You are down one, thanks to that little faceplant trip and fall that happened in Seattle last week. So I am up one as we are featuring 4. We've got 4. These are the 4 most interesting games, I think, of the week. We have previewed one. We must talk about it. Rams at Seahawks. It's not a playoff game, but it's about as close as you can get at this point. This is really, really important. A little bit more important for the Rams because they are 3-4 as opposed to 4-4 like everybody else. We talked about division games last week. They count more than one. Exactly how much, I don't know. And if you asked everybody around the NFL, I'm not sure you'd get their honest, straight answer until they were retired. Actually, it's something I'd like to hear Belichick talk about the next time I see him with the Mannings, which is a lot of fun for football. Nerds, of course. Rams at Seahawks.
Rams.
I'm going with heart here. I'm going with the heart. The heart is in the Hawks, the Seahawks at home. They're going to take it. This is going to be fantastic. You got the Rams.
I'm taking the Rams.
What about that premium blend? What is your finest coffee or your finest Red Bull for those of us that enjoy it? Detroit at Green Bay. Issue with
Detroit.
You like Detroit? Just come in there and they're just going to sweep the thing through.
I love Jordan Love, but I'm going Detroit.
You know, I hate to say it. I think this is one of these games that actually you see a humongous difference without Hutchinson. I think that Green Bay is going to hold up. This one should burn the barn down. Give me Green Bay.
Before we go to the next two games, I want you to know I've had some people email saying that when you go first, they think I make my pick off of you. So let me go first. That way, I don't want people thinking I'm piggybacking on you.
Yeah, we try to flip it 2-2. We try to flip them 2-2. That's the idea. I see a trap game. Dallas at Atlanta. Look out for the trap.
The Fighting Kirk Cousins beat him, and we get another Stephen A. Smith. Ha 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 ha.
This is a trap game for the Falcons. They need to stay on the ground as much as they can, wear out the will that's left over in Dallas. I like Atlanta, but this is a trap game. Look out. And then we have a stressor. The Bears at the Cardinals. The Bears had timeouts, didn't use them when their guys over there waving to the fans. Oops, didn't use it the play before. Oops, here comes stress. Do the Bears have any wiggle room in their division? Absolutely not. Do the Cardinals have any wiggle room in their division? We just discussed that they do not. Bears at Cardinals. Williams, Murray. I just can't name 7 guys on the Cardinals. I'm going with the Bears for the massive bounce back. The Bears really need this because their coaching integrity, their coaching lineup, it's not in the best interest of Caleb Williams that it makes a big shift after this year. But if they go out and let's just say shift poorly in Arizona, all of a sudden that idea is going to enter the room. I like the Bears thanks to a Dunze.
I like the Bears as well. John, very quickly, tell us, what is your X handle?
I am on X at JP Spartan. It's still a great place to see what people see when they're watching football games. I know I like to take a look. Obviously, we all want to take a look and see what Hondo sees, what other people see when they're watching the Raiders. It's still okay to pass the time in X.
Awesome. All right, John, see you next week. Thanks, brother.